The air in the Las Vegas International Convention Center felt thick with anticipation. Thousands of fans, decked out in their Sunday best and their Friday night sparkle, buzzed with an electric energy that promised an unforgettable evening. The stage was a riot of color and lights, spotlights cutting through the haze, bathing the sequin curtain in a kaleidoscope of hues. And then there he was. A roar erupted, shaking the very foundations of the building. Elvis Presley. The king himself strode onto the stage, a vision in white. His jumpsuit, embroidered with shimmering gold and silver, caught every beam of light, making him appear almost angelic. Or perhaps a celestial rock god descended to earth. He moved with that iconic swagger, a slight curl of the lip, a confident nod, acknowledging the deafening adoration of his loyal subjects. The band kicked into gear, a powerful symphony of guitars, drums, and horns. The opening chords of C.C. Rider ripped through the arena, instantly transforming the chaotic energy into a unified pulse. Elvis grabbed the microphone, his voice rich and resonant, filling every corner of the vast space. He swayed, he gyrated, he commanded the stage with an effortless grace that belied the sheer effort of performing night after night. Fans screamed, reaching out as if to touch a deity, some even fainting in the aisles, overcome by the spectacle. For 20 glorious minutes, the concert was everything everyone had hoped for, and more. Elvis moved Backy from one hit to another, each song a masterpiece of showmanship and vocal pout. Blue suede shoes had everyone tapping their feet. Hound Dog brought the house down with its raw energy, and when he launched into Jailhouse Rock, the entire audience felt like they were part of the wildest party in town. The stage lights pulsed with the rhythm, the speakers vibrated with the bass, and the screams of the fans were a constant joyful hum beneath the music. Then it happened. He was halfway through a particularly passionate rendition of Suspicious Minds. His voice soared, reaching for a high note, his hand gripping the microphone, stand sweat beading on his brow. The guitars wailed, the drums pounded, the brass section blared. Suddenly, without warning, the world plunged into darkness. The stage lights, which moments ago had been so dazzling, died. Colossal speakers, which had been rattling the audience's very bones, fell silent. The hum of the thousands of electrical components that power the massive convention center evaporated. It wasn't a flicker, not a momentary dip. It was an absolute suffocating blackout. For a split second, a collective gasp rippled through the audience. Then silence. Profound, echoing silence that was almost more shocking than the sudden darkness. It was as if the entire city had held its breath, and in that vacuum, only the faint, distant sounds of the Vegas Strip could be heard, now seeming impossibly far away. Panic, or at least a ripple of unease, began to stir. People shifted in their seats, whispering, wondering what had happened. Emergency lights, dim and green, flickered on in the aisles, casting long, eerie shadows. But the stage remained a void, swallowed by the sudden night. The electrifying energy of moments before had dissipated, replaced by a nervous uncertainty. From the dark stage, a few confused coughs and murmurs could be heard from the band members. They were as stunned as the audience. How could this happen in Vegas, the city of endless lights where the party never stopped? But then a voice cut through the growing murmur, calm and surprisingly clear in the sudden quiet. It was Elvis. "Well now," he drawled, his voice carrying surprisingly well without the microphone, a testament to its natural power. "Looks like we got ourselves a little situation here, folks." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. The sheer unexpectedness of his voice, unshrouded by amplification, was startling. It felt more intimate, more real. "Don't y'all worry now," he continued, his tone a comforting balm. "This ain't the end of the show. Not by a long shot. Just a little intermission, you might say." He paused, and in the darkness the audience strained to see him. They couldn't, not clearly, but they could feel his presence strong and reassuring. "Tell you what," he said, and now there was a different quality to his voice, a softer, almost reverent tone that hadn't been present during the rock and roll numbers. "Since the lights decided to take a vacation and the sound system's gone on strike, how about we do this the old-fashioned way?" A murmur of curiosity went through the crowd. What did he mean? The old-fashioned way? Then, in the absolute quiet of the arena, a voice rich and warm began to sing. It wasn't a rock and roll anthem or bluesy ballad. It was something else entirely. Something soulful, something deeply familiar to many, yet completely unexpected in this context. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on. Let me stand. I am tired. I am weak. I am worn. It was raw, heartfelt, stripped of all the glitz and glamour, revealing the true essence of the man behind the legend. It was a voice many had heard on records, but never quite like this, vulnerable, intimate, reaching out to them in the shared darkness. The melody was simple, profound, a comforting lullaby in the sudden chaos. A hush fell over the audience again, but this time it was different. It wasn't a silence of uncertainty, but a silence of wonder. Heads tilted, eyes strained, ears focused intently on the sound. The air, which had been thick with rock and roll excitement, now vibrated with a different kind of energy, a quiet reverence. No one moved. No one spoke. They just listened. Listened to the king singing a gospel hymn in the darkness without a single microphone. And for a moment, the thousands of people in that vast arena felt less like an audience and more like a congregation, unified by the unexpected, profound simplicity of a single beautiful voice. Elvis continued to sing, "Precious Lord," his voice a steady beacon in the vast, darkened arena. He stood there, a ghostly white figure, barely visible in the faint green glow of the emergency exit signs. Yet his presence was more powerful than ever. The usual bravado of his stage persona was gone, replaced by a quiet sincerity that resonated deeply with the hushed crowd. He wasn't a king of rock and roll right now. He was just a man singing from his heart. He finished the first verse, and then a surprising thing happened. A voice, clear and strong, joined him from somewhere in the first few rows. Then another, and another. It was hesitant at first, a few brave souls recognizing the beloved hymn and lending their voices. Soon a ripple spread through the audience. A quiet wave of sound. People who had been whispering moments ago now found themselves humming along, then softly singing the words they knew so well. It started small, a gentle current, but as Elvis moved into the second verse, the current grew stronger. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. By the time he reached the chorus, a soft, swelling chorus of voices joined his. It wasn't a polished choir, but a mosaic of every pitch and tone. Some strong and clear, others soft and wavering, but all united in song. Seated a few rows back, Eleanor Jenkins, a prim woman in her late 60s who had traveled all the way from Memphis just for this concert, felt tears welling in her eyes. This wasn't the Elvis she'd paid to see, but in a way it was more him. This was the boy who grew up in Tupelo singing, in church, his voice filled with an honest devotion that had never truly left him, even as he conquered the world with rock and roll. She'd sung this hymn at her grandmother's funeral, at countless Sunday services, and now, here she was, singing it with Elvis Presley in the dark. It felt like coming home. Up on stage, the band members, initially flustered by the blackout, slowly began to relax. Some, like Ronnie Tutt, the drummer, who was known for his gospel chops, began to softly tap rhythms on his thighs, a gentle beat that blended with the singing. James Burton, the guitarist, found himself reaching for his acoustic guitar, which was usually only used for quiet moments, and with a careful ear he found a key and started strumming simple, soft chords, adding a beautiful, unamplified accompaniment. Even without power, they were musicians, and they could still make music. Elvis, seeing and hearing the response, let a small, genuine smile touch his lips, closed his eyes for a moment, letting the wave of sound wash over him. This was different from the roaring applause he usually received. This was a shared moment. Intimate and profound, it felt good, it felt right. When, "Precious Lord," ended, the silence that followed was not one of confusion or nervousness, but of quiet reflection. People breathed out a collective sigh of something like peace. Thank you very much," Elvis said, his voice still unamplified, but carrying across the vast space. "That was beautiful. You know, some of my earliest and fondest memories are of singing gospel back home. That's what we did in church, at home, just about anywhere." He paused, and a wistful note entered his voice. "This feels a little like that, don't it? Just folks singing together." A smattering of applause, softer than before, rippled through the crowd. More people were getting comfortable in the dark, the initial shock wearing off, replaced by a sense of shared adventure. "So," Elvis continued, "since we got the time, and we got the spirit, I want to hear something we can all join in on." A few shouts erupted from the crowd, a mix of gospel titles. "Amazing Grace, how great thou art! Peace in the valley." Elvis listened, a thoughtful expression on his face. Okay, I hear you. Lots of good ones. How about we try Amazing Grace next? That's one everybody knows, right?" A louder, more enthusiastic murmur of agreement went through the crowd, and so he began. His voice, clear as a bell, started the familiar melody. "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound." And instantly the thousands of voices joined him, stronger this time, more confident. The melody filled the vast hall, echoing off the walls, a powerful wave of communal song. People began to sway gently in their seats. Some pulled out lighters, creating tiny flickering stars that dotted the darkness, adding to the surreal beauty of the scene. A young man named David, who had dragged his skeptical girlfriend to the concert, found himself utterly captivated. He'd only ever known Elvis, the rock star, the icon, the flashy performer. But this was different. This was raw, heartfelt, and deeply moving. He watched as his girlfriend, usually glued to her purse or her phone, closed her eyes and quietly sang along, a small, peaceful smile on her face. He reached over and took her hand, and she squeezed his. A silent acknowledgement of the magic unfolding around them. The sound swelled, becoming a majestic, unhurried anthem. It was as if the darkness had stripped away all the usual barriers, the fame, the expectations, the showmanship, and left only the pure connection of human voices lifted in harmony. It was more than just a sing-along. It was an experience. A moment where thousands of strangers became one, bound by a shared song in the most unexpected of circumstances. Elvis, in the center of it all, felt a profound sense of peace. This wasn't about selling records or topping the charts. This was about something much deeper, something that touched the soul. And as the final notes of Amazing Grace faded into the quiet hum of the emergency lights, he knew this night was going to be unlike any other he had ever experienced. The concert had stopped, but the music had only just begun. As Amazing Grace gently concluded, the soft glow from the hundreds of lighters in the audience continued to flicker, transforming the vast arena into a celestial dome. The air was no longer thick with the lingering scent of popcorn and perfume, but with something lighter, purer, almost reverent. The initial shock of the blackout had fully dissipated, replaced by a unique sense of camaraderie. Elvis, still standing center stage, now seemed more relaxed, less like a performer and more like a host. "That was truly something, folks," he said, his voice laced with genuine warmth. "You know, back in my early days, before the big lights and the loud guitars, this is how we did it. Just voices, and maybe a little guitar." He gestured vaguely to James Burton, who was already tuning his acoustic, enjoying the simplicity of the moment. The band members, initially unsure what to do without their instruments, had begun to find their rhythm. Ronnie Tutt, the drummer, had found a couple of empty water bottles and was tapping out a soft, intricate beat on them, creating a gentle percussion that added a subtle pulse to the quiet air. Jerry Sheff, the bass player, hummed bass lines, adding a low, resonant drone that made the vocal harmonies richer. The backing vocalists, the sweet inspirations, and the Imperials had gathered closer to Elvis, their voices now blending effortlessly with his, providing a truly angelic harmony that was just as able without amplification. "Okay," Elvis continued, "so we've got a rhythm section. We've got some sweet voices. What's next? Any requests for a little peace in the valley?" A wave of enthusiastic yes and all right swept through the crowd. Peace in the Valley was a classic, a comforting hymn known by generations. Elvis began the song, and this time the audience didn't hesitate. They joined in almost immediately, their voices a flowing river of sound that filled every corner of the vast hall. The lighters swayed in unison, creating a galaxy of tiny stars. Up in the cheap seats far from the stage, a young woman named Sarah felt a lump in her throat. She had come to Vegas for a bachelorette party, dragged along by her friends to see Elvis, though she usually preferred rock music. But here in the dark, stripped of all the glitz, she felt something stir within her. Her grandmother used to sing Peace in the Valley to her when she was a little girl before bedtime. She hadn't thought of that song or her grandmother in years. Now, surrounded by thousands of strangers singing that very same hymn with Elvis Presley, she felt a profound sense of connection, a warmth spreading through her chest that eased the anxieties she'd been carrying about her own future. She started singing, her voice small at first, then growing stronger, surprising herself with how easily the words came back to her. Meanwhile, an older couple, Arthur and Martha, who had been married for 50 years and had seen Elvis perform countless times, held hands tightly. Martha leaned her head on Arthur's shoulder. "Remember the church socials, Art," she whispered. "Like it was yesterday, love. Only now, it's a lot more people." For them, this wasn't just a concert. It was a revival, a spiritual gathering that brought them back to simpler times, to their roots. They sang with full hearts, their voices a little shaky with age, but filled with a lifetime of shared faith. As the song progressed, more and more people felt emboldened to participate. Some who might never have sung in public before found their voices rising in the anonymity of the darkness. It wasn't about performance or perfection, it was about being part of something bigger. People began to stand up in their seats, swaying, their faces dimly lit by the emergency lights, showing expressions of wonder and contentment. Elvis, watching the sea of flickering lights and listening to the rising tide of voices, felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. This was a moment he would never forget. It was real. It was honest. He didn't need the spotlights, the roaring crowds, or the screaming fans to feel connected. In fact, this quiet, shared moment felt even more connecting. He motioned for the Imperials and the sweet inspirations to step forward a bit closer to the edge of the stage, and their powerful harmonies soared above the crowd, adding depth and richness to the chorus. They were seasoned gospel singers, and their voices blended, pacing, elevating the entire experience. When Peace in the Valley came to its peaceful end, the applause was heartfelt, but still gentle. The silence that followed was filled with a sense of quiet joy, a shared breath among thousands. "Man, this is something else," Elvis said, his voice a little hoarse from singing without amplification but clear with emotion. "I swear, I could just stay here all night with y'all just singing, no fuss, no bother, just music." A wave of agreement rippled through the audience. Many of them felt the same way. The outside world, the problems, the worries, all seemed to melt away in this cocoon of shared song. "All right," he chuckled softly. "How about a good old-fashioned spiritual? Something with a bit of a bounce. Anyone for Swing Low, Sweet Chariot?" Immediately, the crowd began to clap softly, a rhythmic pulse emerging from the darkness. And then Elvis began the familiar words, his voice infused with a playful energy. "Swing low, sweet chariot." And the voices of thousands, now truly a harmonious choir, lifted with him, creating a powerful, soulful sound that transcended the simple act of singing. It was a gathering, a communion, an unexpected spiritual awakening in the heart of Las Vegas. The darkness outside might have been unsettling, but inside a new kind of light was shining. As "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot" filled the vast convention hall, the energy shifted. The solemnity of the earlier hymns was replaced by a more joyful rhythmic sway. The soft clapping that began with Elvis's lead rippled through the crowd, creating a steady, comforting beat. It wasn't just singing anymore, it was an experience. People were swaying in their seats, some standing and gently moving to the rhythm, their faces illuminated by the dim emergency lights, or the flickering lighters showing a mixture of awe and pure happiness. In the middle of the audience, a man named Frank, who looked like he'd seen better days, sat slumped in his seat. He'd come to Vegas with a small, ill-gotten sum of money, hoping to turn his luck around, but had only lost more. He felt hollow, adrift, his faith in anything, let alone himself, long gone. He'd bought the concert ticket on a whim, hoping to escape his thoughts, but even Elvis's usual show hadn't been enough to lift his spirits. When the power went out, he'd scoffed, thinking, of course even the king can't fix this. But then, Elvis started singing, and something in Frank stirred. The gospel hymns were familiar from a childhood long past, from Sunday school lessons and his grandmother's gentle voice. He hadn't sung "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot" since he was a boy. But the words came back to him unbidden. He found himself humming, then softly singing along. Communal sound, the quiet strength in the voices around him, was like a gentle hand on his shoulder. He felt a tear track down his cheek, not of sadness, but of a surprising, unfamiliar hope. He wasn't alone in the dark. Up on stage, Elvis took a moment to let the sweet inspirations and the Imperials take the lead. On a verse, their combined voices creating a rich, powerful harmony that resonated deeply. He watched the audience, his eyes adjusting to the dim light, seeing the swaying forms, the upturned faces. This was truly remarkable. He'd performed for kings and queens for millions on TV, but this was different. This felt more intimate, more real than any show he'd ever done. It was like a giant family gathering. He leaned towards James Burton, who was still strumming his acoustic, its soft notes barely audible, above the collaptics. "This is something, James, ain't it?" he whispered. James grinned, a rare, genuine smile, maybe. As the song concluded, Elvis stepped forward slightly. "Folks," he said, his voice imbued with genuine emotion, "I want to thank y'all. This is more special than any fancy light show or big sound system could ever be. It's about being together, ain't it? About sharing something good. You know, when I was a boy, my mama always told me, Elvis, no matter how high you fly or how bright the lights shine, never forget where you came from, and never forget the good Lord who gave you that voice. And tonight feels like coming home to that. It feels like Mama's here." His voice softened on the last words, a vulnerable, heartfelt confession. A wave of understanding and empathy washed through the audience. Many felt the weight of his words, the genuine emotion behind the king's public persona. It wasn't just a show anymore. It was a deeply personal sharing. A few audience members, emboldened by the atmosphere, began to share their own stories, though softly only with those nearest them. A woman in the row in front of Eleanor Jenkins quietly recounted how her own mother used to sing gospel hymns while she baked, filling their tiny kitchen with music and love. Eleanor nodded. The shared experience was opening hearts, creating connections that wouldn't exist in a typical concert setting. "All right," Elvis said, bringing the focus back, but with a new lightness in his voice. "Since we're on the subject of blessings, how about how great thou art? That's a powerful one, don't you think?" Chorus of agreement rose, and Elvis began, his voice reverent and full. "O Lord my God, when I, an awesome wonder, consider all the works thy hands have made." The thousands of voices lifted as one, each word a testament, each note a prayer. The sound was majestic, a swelling tide of praise that seemed to lift the very roof of the convention center. People closed their eyes, feeling the power of the shared moment. Some raised their hands, not in the rock and roll gesture of adoration, but in a silent act of worship. Frank, the struggling man, found himself standing, his eyes closed. He hadn't prayed in years, but now the words of the hymn felt like a prayer itself. He felt a lightness, a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't a sudden cure for all his problems, but it was a beginning, a crack in the wall he'd built around his heart. As the final soaring notes of "How Great Thou Art" faded, the silence that followed was charged with emotion. It was a deeply personal moment for so many, yet shared by thousands. The darkness outside the arena still held, but inside a profound light had been kindled, a light of community faith, and the enduring power of music to heal and connect, even when all the power was out. Elvis, standing in the dim light, felt completely at home, more himself than he had been in a long time. The quiet hum that followed, "How Great Thou Art," was filled with a palpable sense of peace. The air, once electric with the anticipation of a rock concert, now vibrated with a different kind of energy, one of shared vulnerability and unexpected comfort. Elvis, standing center stage, took a moment to simply breathe it all in. This was more than just a performance. It was a communion. He adjusted his stance, his voice a little hoarse from singing without a microphone, but full of genuine emotion. Thank you for that, folks," he said, his words barely audible over the soft whispers and sighs of the crowd. That hymn, that one always takes me back to the little church in Tupelo, Mississippi, just a small wooden building, hot in the summer, cold in the winter. But all the music in there, it could lift your soul right to the heavens. He paused, a distant look in his eyes, as if truly seeing that old church. My mama Gladys, she loved gospel music more than anything. She'd sing around the house while she was cooking, humming melodies even when she wasn't singing words. And she taught me from the youngest age that music was a gift from God. Cleared his throat, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. There was the church, and there was my mama. A wave of warmth spread through the audience. This wasn't the showman, this was the man. It was a rare glimpse behind the curtain of superstardom, revealing the humble spiritual core that lay beneath. Eleanor Jenkins, seated a few rows back, felt tears prick her eyes again. This was the Elvis. She remembered the one who carried the spirit of the South within him. "So," Elvis continued, a gentle smile returning to his face, "tonight, with all the fancy stuff gone, it just feels right. It feels like we're back in that little church, just singing because we love to, because it feels good to the soul." He looked out into the darkness, his gaze seemingly connecting with each flickering lighter flame. I think we need a little more of that good feeling. How about just a closer walk with thee?" The gentle strumming of James Burton's acoustic guitar began soft and inviting. Then the rich, comforting voice of Elvis followed instantly by the harmonious blend of the sweet inspirations and the imperials. "Just a closer walk with thee. Granted. Jesus is my plea." The audience joined in their voices, now perfectly attuned to the mood, a unified chorus of thousands. The song was a prayer, a yearning for guidance and comfort, and in the shared darkness it resonated deeply. People found themselves swaying slowly, some with eyes closed, lost in the simple beauty of the melody. And the powerful message. Sarah, the young woman from the bachelorette party, found herself thinking of her own life, of the big decisions she faced. The lyrics of the song felt like a personal conversation with something bigger than herself. She wasn't particularly religious, but in this moment the song offered a sense of peace, a quiet assurance that she wasn't alone. She squeezed her friend's hand, and her friend, sensing the depth of the moment, squeezed back. Even the security guards, usually stoic and observant, were visibly moved. A few of them, standing near the exits, were quietly humming along, their faces softened by the unexpected turn of events. This wasn't work anymore. It was a shared human experience. As Just a Closer Walk with Thee reached its poignant conclusion, the silence that followed was filled with a gentle sense of warmth. The air felt charged with unspoken understanding. With shared vulnerability, Elvis took a deep breath. "This is what it's all about, ain't it?" he said, his voice a little raspy now, but full of emotion. "Not the lights, not the applause, but the connection, the feeling of being together, singing from the heart. Thank you. Thank you all for making this the most special night of my life, truly." The applause this time was not thunderous, but deeply heartfelt, a ripple of quiet gratitude that spread through the vast arena. It was a recognition not just of the king's voice, but of his heart. And in the heart of Las Vegas, surrounded by thousands of strangers, Elvis Presley felt truly at home, singing the music that had shaped his soul, proving that even in the darkest moments, music and the human spirit could always find a way to shine. As the night deepened, the glow of the emergency lights and the multitude of flickering lighters became the only illumination in the vast hall. Hours had passed since the power outage, but the initial confusion had long since melted away, replaced by an astonishing sense of community. The gospel sing-along, led by Elvis, had taken on a life of its own, an organic, evolving testament to the power of music and human connection. Elvis, despite the long hours, seemed energized by the atmosphere. He had shed his sequined jacket, revealing a simpler white shirt beneath, making him seem even more approachable. Less the icon, more the friend. He paced the stage gently, sometimes sitting on the edge, his voice still strong, though with a beautiful raw huskiness from the unamplified singing. The band members had settled into a comfortable rhythm, their acoustic instruments and rhythmic hand claps forming a quiet, supportive foundation for the thousands of voices. "All right, folks," Elvis called out, his voice carrying clearly. "Who else has a favorite gospel hymn for us tonight? We got all the time in the world, seems like." A few good-natured chuckles rippled through the crowd. The situation, initially inconvenient, had transformed into a truly unique once-in-a-lifetime event. Shouts of titles filled the air. "I'll Fly Away," "Old Rugged Cross," "This Little Light of Mine." Elvis listened, sometimes repeating a request, then leading into another familiar tune. Each song was met with enthusiastic participation, the voices of thousands swelling and receding like a peaceful tide. Young David, still holding his girlfriend's hand, found himself completely immersed. He looked around the vast, dimly lit space, noticing how different people looked now. The initial expressions of excitement or frustration had been replaced by serene smiles, thoughtful gazes, and sometimes quiet tears. It was as if everyone had stripped away their outer Persianage and were just themselves. He saw an old man gently patting the hand of a young woman he didn't know, a shared smile passing between them. He saw teenagers usually glued to their phones, singing with genuine enthusiasm. This wasn't just a concert, it was a profound human experience. He leaned towards his girlfriend. "This is incredible, isn't it?" She nodded, her eyes shining in the dim light. "I never thought I'd see Elvis like this, or any concert, for that matter. It's magic." Frank, the man who had felt so lost, found himself humming along to "This Little Light of Mine," a song that suddenly held new meaning for him. He imagined his own little light buried for so long, now flickering back to life. He wasn't sure what tomorrow held, but for tonight, in this unexpected moment of shared music, he felt a spark of hope. He even found himself chatting quietly with the woman next to him, a shy smile on his face, something he hadn't done with a stranger in years. Eleanor Jenkins, watching Elvis from her seat, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She'd always believed in the power of faith and community, and to see it unfold so beautifully led by someone she admired so much was deeply moving. This was a testament to the man, not just the myth. As the hours drifted by, the sing-along became more than just a sequence of songs. Between hymns, Elvis would share more anecdotes from his childhood, about his family, about the importance of faith in his life. These were not the polished stories of interviews, but raw, heartfelt memories spoken softly in the dark. The audience would respond with quiet murmurs of understanding, sometimes a shared laugh, sometimes a collective sigh. The atmosphere transformed the arena into a giant living room, a sacred space where thousands of strangers became family. People shared water bottles, offered tissues to those wiping away tears, and even shared snacks, a quiet exchange of kindness in the unexpected setting. The usual strict rules of a concert vanished, replaced by an unspoken code of shared humanity. At one point, a young woman with a surprisingly strong, clear voice started singing a verse of "Nearer, My God, to Thee," a cappella from the audience. Elvis, hearing her, immediately quieted the stage and let her voice ring out. When she finished, a wave of gentle applause and appreciative murmurs filled the space. Elvis smiled. "See that, folks? Everyone's got a voice. Everyone's got something to share. That was beautiful, thank you." It was a moment that underscored the true spirit of the night. It wasn't just about Elvis singing to them, but about everyone singing with him and with each other. The power outage had taken away the spectacle, but it had revealed something far more profound. The raw, undeniable power of human voices, lifted together in harmony, cutting through the darkness. The night was far from over, and the memories being made were etched not just in minds, but in souls. As the hours of the unexpected gospel sing-along stretched into the deep night, the atmosphere in the convention center grew even more intimate. The initial novelty had worn off, replaced by a profound sense of shared experience. The voices, once hesitant, now swelled with a natural ease, moving banking from one hymn to the next, often with just a quiet prompt from Elvis or a few starting notes from James Burton's acoustic guitar. Elvis, leaning back against one of the speaker stacks, now silent monoliths in the dark, watched the crowd. He saw tired faces, but also faces alight with a quiet joy. He noticed how people were leaning into each other, sharing space, their personal bubbles dissolved by the shared darkness and the unifying power of the music. "You know," he said, his voice a little raspier from the continuous singing, but filled with a relaxed warmth. "When the power went out, my first thought, but then I remembered what my grandmama always said. Honey, when one door closes, the good Lord usually opens a window. And I tell you what, this window tonight, it's something special." Chorus of appreciative murmurs and quiet agreements rippled through the audience. "So," he continued, "we've heard some beautiful voices from y'all tonight. I got a feeling there's a whole lot more talent out there in the dark. Anyone else feel like sharing a little bit? Maybe a song, or even just a verse?" A silence fell over the crowd, but it was a different kind of silence this time. Not nervous, but expectant. People looked around, some nudging their friends, encouraging them to step forward. Then, from about 10 rows back, a shy voice spoke up. "Mr. Presley, I can play a little." Elvis peered. "What do you play, son?" "Piano, Sir Ard," the voice replied, belonging to a young man named Michael who looked no older than 20. He'd been too nervous to speak up until now, but the warmth of the night had given him courage. "But there's no power." Elvis chuckled softly. "Well, bless your heart, son. That's true for the grand piano up here. But is there anything else you can play? Unamplified?" Michael hesitated, then said, "I have a harmonica, sir. Always carry it with me." A ripple of excitement went through the crowd. "A harmonica? That could work. A harmonica, you say?" Elvis's voice brightened. "Well, why don't you make your way up here, son? Let's hear what you got." With the help of a few ushers using flashlights on their phones, Michael, clutching his harmonica nervously, made his way through the rows and up the steps to the stage. He was shaking a little as he stood before the king, who offered him a warm, encouraging smile. "What's your name, son?" Elvis asked, putting a comforting hand on Michael's shoulder. "Michael, sir. Michael Jenkins." "Well, Michael, welcome to the stage. What tune you got for us?" Michael took a deep breath. "I was thinking, I saw the light, sir. It's a good one for tonight." Elvis grinned. "Perfect choice, Michael James. Give us a little intro in G, if you please." James Burton nodded, and his acoustic guitar began a simple country-inflected intro. Michael lifted his harmonica to his lips. For a moment, a wave of pure, clear harmonica music filled the air. A soulful, bluesy sound that was both surprising and deeply moving. It was incredibly skillful, a raw, heartfelt performance that perfectly fit the mood of the night. When Michael finished the instrumental introduction, Elvis joined in, his voice strong and clear. I wandered so aimless, life filled with sin. I wouldn't let my dear Savior. And thousands of voices joined him, singing with renewed vigor, the harmonica weaving its beautiful melody throughout the song, adding a layer of poignant beauty. The crowd erupted in applause. When the song finished, far more enthusiastic than for previous songs, a testament to Michael's unexpected contribution, Michael, beaming, looked at Elvis, who clapped him on the shoulder. That was wonderful, Michael, truly wonderful. You got a gift, son. Don't you ever forget that. Inspired by Michael's bravery, other audience members began to speak up. A woman who taught music in high school asked if she could lead a verse of a hymn in a different key, just for fun. And Elvis enthusiastically agreed. A man who identified himself as a former church choir director offered to lead a 4-part harmony on Amazing Grace, guiding the various sections of the audience. The stage became a fluid space, with people briefly stepping up, sharing their talents, and then returning to their seats, all under Elvis's warm, encouraging gaze. The unexpected collaborations, the unveiling of hidden talents among the audience, deepened the sense of connection, transformed the thousands of individuals into a living, breathing choir, a testament to the collective power and beauty that lay dormant within them. The darkness, which had initially seemed like a problem, had become the catalyst for a truly unique and heartwarming experience, allowing the true light of human spirit to shine through. As the gospel sing-along continued hour after hour, a strange phenomenon began to unfold beyond the walls of the Las Vegas International Convention Center. In the absence of news from inside the darkened arena, rumors began to circulate. Initial reports had simply stated a power outage had shut down the Elvis concert. But then, phone calls started to come out of the venue, brief, excited whispers of what was truly happening. It's incredible, one fan managed to relay to a friend outside, her voice filled with awe. Elvis is still singing gospel songs, and everyone's singing with him. Soon, local news channels, initially just reporting on the widespread power outage that had affected a significant portion of the city, started picking up on the peculiar reports from the convention center. Reporters armed with emergency lights and battery-powered cameras converged on the site. The scene outside was a mix of chaos and curiosity. People who had been turned away from the concert or those whose homes were also without power gathered near the entrance, drawn by the unusual buzz. They could hear nothing of the music inside, but the visible glow of the emergency lights through the darkened windows and the occasional burst of muffled applause hinted that something extraordinary was indeed happening. A local radio reporter, holding a crackling microphone, managed to get a brief interview with a weary-looking security guard who emerged for a break. "What's going on in there, buddy?" the reporter asked. The guard just shook his head, a stunned expression on his face. "You wouldn't believe it. It's a miracle, Elvis. He just started singing gospel." And everyone joined in, thousands of people. It's been hours, no power, no lights, just pure music. The news spread like wildfire. Elvis Presley leads massive gospel sing-along during Vegas blackout. The headline blared across emergency news feeds and special reports. Soon, people who lived nearby or those simply curious started arriving, parking their cars and standing silently outside the convention center. They couldn't hear much, just a faint, almost subconscious thrum of thousands of voices, but they felt the presence of something profound. Inside, oblivious to the growing crowd outside, Elvis and his impromptu choir continued. They had moved onto a medley of spirituals, a continuous flow of music that seemed to weave through the very fabric of the night. Contributions from the audience had become more frequent. A woman with a surprisingly powerful tenor voice led a verse of "Go Tell It on the Mountain," her voice ringing out with joyful abandon. A small group of older women who recognized each other from their church choir back home stood up and delivered a stunning impromptu harmony on Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, their voices blending with beautiful precision. Elvis encouraged it all. He'd stand back, a look of pure joy on his face, letting the audience take the lead. "See that, folks," he'd say. "That's what it's all about. Every voice matters." Frank, the man who had felt so lost earlier, was now standing, singing with a full heart, tears openly streaming down his face. He felt something shifting within him, a wall breaking down. He looked around at the faces dimly lit but radiating a newfound light. He wasn't sure if it was God or just the powerful force of shared humanity, but he felt a connection he hadn't felt in years. He felt hope. Eleanor Jenkins, the Memphis woman, had a wide Syrian smile on her face. She closed her eyes, letting the collective sound wash over her. This was more than she could have ever dreamed of. It was a testament to Elvis's true spirit and to the enduring power of faith in music. As the night wore on, the sing-along seemed to gain a timeless quality. The concept of time had become meaningless. There was only the darkness, the shared warmth, and the continuous flow of voices. For those inside, the outside world ceased to exist. All that mattered was the present moment, the voices, the shared humanity, and the surprising, unexpected light that had emerged from the darkness. The news continued to report on the extraordinary event, sharing snippets from phone calls describing the scene outside. It was becoming a national story, an emblem of resilience, and the unexpected beauty that could emerge from a difficult situation. And inside, as the first faint hint of dawn began to paint the sky outside, the voices continued to rise, a beacon of hope and harmony in the heart of Las Vegas. As the first faint hues of purple and gray began to paint the sky outside, hinting at the approaching dawn, the gospel sing-along inside the convention center reached its emotional peak. Hours had passed in the darkness, blurring the lines between performer and audience, stranger and friend. The air was thick with warmth, not just from body heat, but from a profound sense of shared experience. Elvis, now sitting cross-legged on the edge of the stage, his voice hoarse but still clear, was no longer leading every song. He was guiding, listening, and allowing the collective spirit of the crowd to take the reins. James Burton's acoustic guitar was a constant comforting presence, providing a soft melody that wove through the thousands of voices. Ronnie Tutt kept a gentle, steady beat on his water bottles, a surprising but effective percussion. The audience was a sea of swaying bodies, bathed in the dim green glow of emergency lights and the fading light of countless lighters. Many had fallen asleep for a while only to wake and join in the next hymn. Children, initially restless, were now nestled comfortably in their parents' laps, lulled by the continuous flow of music. It was a scene of communal peace, unlike anything Las Vegas had ever witnessed. "You know," Elvis said softly, his voice cutting through a brief lull between songs, "they say music is the universal language, and to no matter where you're from, what you believe, or who you are, when we sing together, we're all just people, and that's a beautiful thing." Paused, looking out at the faces, seeing the tears on some, the smiles on others, the quiet reverence on so many. I feel like we've created something truly special here. Something that didn't need the lights, didn't need the big sound, just heart." A woman's voice, clear and strong, rose from the back of the arena. "Thank you, Elvis. Thank you for staying with us." A wave of agreement rippled through the crowd, a murmur of gratitude. Elvis smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. "My pleasure, ma'am. My absolute pleasure. This is a night I'll never forget, and I hope y'all won't either." He looked at the band. "All right, fellas, I think we need one more. One to send us off. One that captures everything this night has been about." He looked back at the crowd. "How about You'll Never Walk Alone?" It wasn't strictly a gospel hymn, but its message of hope, resilience, and solidarity fit the mood perfectly. As Elvis began to sing, his voice filled with a powerful, raw emotion, the entire arena swelled with response. "When you walk through a storm, keep your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark." Thousands of voices joined him, stronger than ever, imbued with the collective experience of the night. The song became a powerful anthem, a shared promise that they were not alone, that they would face any storm together. The sheer volume of unamplified voices was breathtaking, a symphony of human spirit. Frank, standing in his row, sang with a renewed vigor. The lyrics felt personal, speaking directly to the storm he had been walking through. He felt connected, not just to the music, but to every single person in that room. He knew deep in his heart that this night had changed him. He would walk out of this arena a different man. Sarah, the young woman who had rediscovered her grandmother's song, felt tears streaming down her face, not of sadness, but of profound gratitude. The anxiety she had carried felt lighter, replaced by a quiet sense of peace and belonging. As the song built to its emotional crescendo, the lighters in the audience, many nearing empty, flickered their last, creating a dying constellation of stars. But by now, the first faint light of dawn was filtering through the high windows of the convention center, a soft gray illumination that slowly began to push back the darkness. As the final soaring notes of "You'll Never Walk Alone" faded, a profound, almost sacred silence descended upon the hall. It was a silence filled with emotion, reflection, and a shared understanding that something truly extraordinary had happened. The darkness that had plunged them into uncertainty hours ago now seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a deep, quiet light within each person. Elvis, still sitting on the stage, looked out at the faces now slowly becoming visible in the encroaching dawn. He saw the smiles, the lingering tears, the tired but deeply content expressions. He felt a lump in his throat. This wasn't just a concert that went wrong. It was a night that went profoundly, unexpectedly right. It was the most honest, most real performance of his life. As the last notes of "You'll Never Walk Alone" faded, a deep collective silence settled over the vast hall, unlike any silence felt before. It wasn't the quiet of a performance ending, but the hush of a profound, shared experience. The first rays of dawn, a soft, ethereal light, began to filter more strongly through the high windows, slowly pushing back the shadows that had cocooned them for hours. Elvis remained seated on the edge of the stage, looking out at the thousands of faces, now slowly becoming visible in the encroaching light. He saw the lingering tears, the quiet smiles, the expressions of wonder and deep contentment. He felt a profound sense of peace settle over him, a feeling far deeper than any applause could bring. "Folks," he said, his voice soft, almost a whisper, yet carrying clearly in the hushed space. "Look at that. The sun's coming up and we made it through the night together." A soft murmur rippled through the audience, a collective sigh of quiet contentment. Just then, with a soft hum that gradually grew into a familiar buzz, the emergency lights in the aisles brightened. Then, with a soft click, the main house lights flickered, dimmed slightly, and then came on, casting a warm golden glow across the entire arena. The sudden brightness was startling after hours in the dimness, and many people instinctively blinked, raising hands to shield their eyes. Then the massive speakers on stage crackled and a low, reassuring hum filled the air. The power was back. For a moment, no one moved. The spell of the darkness and the shared sing-along was too powerful to simply break. Crew members who had been working tirelessly behind the scenes began to stir, ready to resume their duties. Elvis slowly stood up. He picked up a microphone, the one that had been silent for hours, and tested it. "Check 1, 2, he said, his voice now amplified, sounding almost alien after the intimate, unamplified hours. The crowd stirred, a wave of murmurs and a few scattered claps. But it wasn't the roaring ovation from the beginning of the concert. It was something quieter, more respectful. "Well, now," Elvis said, a knowing smile touching his lips. "Looks like the lights decided to join the party after all. Just a little late to the show, ain't they?" A wave of gentle laughter rippled through the crowd. "Y'all have been incredible tonight," he continued, his voice now imbued with a renewed energy, but still carrying the warmth of the shared hours. "Truly, this wasn't the show we planned. But I gotta say, it was the best show I've ever been a part of, and it's all thanks to you. Every single one of you." He paused, looking around the arena. "They say Vegas is the city of lights, but tonight, in the dark, we found a different kind of light, didn't we? A light that comes from within. A light that comes from singing together, from sharing our hearts." He looked at his band, who were already picking up their instruments, tuning up. "All right, fellas, let's play 'em out. But just one more for the road. A little something to remember this night by." He looked back at the crowd, his eyes shining. "And remember this, folks. No matter how dark it gets in life or in a concert hall, there's always light. And sometimes you just gotta sing it into being." With a nod to his band, the opening chords of "Can't Help Falling in Love" filled the arena, amplified, clear, and beautiful. It was a gentle, loving farewell, a poignant closing to an unforgettable night. People swayed, some humming, some wiping away the last of their tears. As the song ended, Elvis offered a deep bow, his signature scarves fluttering. "Thank you. Thank you very much," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "God bless you all. Drive safe and remember this night." The applause this time was sustained, heartfelt, filled with an emotional depth that transcended mere entertainment. It was a standing ovation, not just for the king, but for the shared journey they had all taken in the darkness. As people slowly began to make their way out of the arena, the atmosphere was different. There was no mad rush, no jostling. Instead, people lingered, exchanged quiet smiles, some even embracing complete strangers. Frank, the lost man, walked out with a lighter step, a newfound purpose in his eyes. Sarah, the young woman, felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years, a quiet strength guiding her. Eleanor Jenkins, the Memphis woman, walked out with a smile on her face, her heart full, carrying a memory more precious than any souvenir. The news crews outside watched in amazement as the attendees emerged, not looking tired and frustrated, but transformed, their faces glowing with a quiet inner light. The story of the Elvis concert that went dark but found its soul would echo through Las Vegas and across the nation for years to come. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest performances happen when the lights go out, and the most heartwarming connections are forged in the unexpected quiet of the night. King had sung not just to his fans, but with them, proving that the true power of music and of the human heart needed no amplification to shine.